Hello and welcome to A Journey to Awareness. Are you ready to take a voyage to the uncharted places within you, where you will be guided to ways to heal your wounds, look at your life choices, release your fears, and take control of your future? Stick with me through these podcasts and you will take the most exciting adventure of your life, the journey to you. Let's go. Hello and welcome. I'm Shauna Hoffman. I thought for this week's podcast, I would delve into boundaries. It's funny, one of my original ideas for this podcast is the A to Z of self-awareness. Well, since I've done quite a few episodes on what awareness is, it's time for me to go to B, boundaries. Stick with me as I navigate the whole alphabet of self-awareness. So we hear the words boundaries thrown around a lot in the personal growth world. Let's delve into the big, bad, and beautiful of boundaries in your world. Basically, a boundary is a personal guideline you set up for yourself, limitations that guide you to your own behavior and the kind of behavior you accept from others. Personal boundaries, in the most simplest terms, are what you create to establish how you want other people to treat you, or how they behave when they're around you. When you have healthy boundaries, you empower your relationships to be truly caring, emotionally respectful, and appropriate. Most importantly, these are the kind of limitations you put on yourself and those around you to keep you safe. These boundaries can be anything from physical boundaries to emotional, social, media, material, financial boundaries, sexual boundaries, personal space boundaries, tolerance boundaries. Oh, wow, where do we begin? First, let's delve into the reality that self-awareness and boundaries go hand in hand. Sometimes, in order to set boundaries, you have to be really self-aware of what you don't want in life or in a relationship. You need to be able to check in with your own needs, emotions, hurts, growth, all that stuff that's wrapped up in self-awareness. You need to be able to see what's working in your life and what isn't. I like to think of boundaries as a line that you lay down that you don't cross in order to stay healthy, or a line you lay down that you don't allow someone else to cross in your world. Well, let's just talk about emotional boundaries for a minute. You need emotional boundaries so that you can differentiate your needs from someone else's, your feelings from someone else's. Let's think about that for a minute. It's one thing to have empathy or sympathy for someone else, but it is another thing when your own emotions are being affected by someone else's because you don't have a safe boundary. Now, here's a challenge for those people who are overly nurturing, both men and women. Those people who put others' needs before their own. It's that old belief I talk about, the wrong belief that self-care is selfish. Sometimes the first part of setting boundaries is accepting the fact that you have every right to stand up for yourself, speak up for yourself, and demand that others respect you and do the same. This is why boundaries are so tied up with codependence. When you're in a codependent relationship, you tend to meld your own needs with others' needs in order to keep the relationship secure. But secure is the last thing that it is. The most powerful, beautiful, and healthy relationships are when two people are secure in who they are, what they need, and what they want. And when they feel safe to make sure the other understands their needs and their boundaries, and they in turn understand their partners. This is not only true in love relationships, but with families, coworkers, friends. I'll give you a personal example. I was working with a friend on a project. She was really pushy because I was not agreeing on how we should follow through on a business idea. All of a sudden, she went from pushy to being a bully and really aggressive. Well, I have a strong boundary around being treated like that from anyone. I don't let anyone treat me disrespectfully. So I laid down that boundary and I let her know that we could continue as long as she refrains from bullying behavior. Done. She got it. I spoke up. I knew my boundaries, and now we have a wonderful relationship moving forward. In the past, the younger me, the pleaser me, may not have spoken up. Okay, I'll be really honest with you and with myself. I would not have spoken up. But I have come to learn that if you make your boundaries clear to yourself and to others, then anything is possible. But I was also willing to walk away if she was not able to treat me respectfully. Herein lies the issue for so many people. They're afraid to set a boundary for fear that they will lose that person in their life or that relationship. But I promise you, if you're afraid to set boundaries with someone for fear of losing them, it's not them that you're going to lose. It's you. So we have boundaries around how we allow people to treat us. I want you to think about that for this minute, just for this minute. What are your boundaries around people and how they treat you? What are your boundaries around people that yell at you, swear at you, speak disrespectfully to you? Do you set a strong boundary with people to make sure that they don't talk about you or humiliate you in public? What about people that tell certain kinds of jokes around you? Or they talk about your body or your weight? Or they bully you? Or they're emotionally aggressive with you? Or they physically hurt you? What are your boundaries? Do you have good, strong boundaries? And let me say this. If you're in a physically abusive relationship or any that makes you feel truly in danger, please reach out for help. I promise you it is out there. You are not alone. Emotionally abusive behavior takes place not only in relationships, but with family members, coworkers, bosses, friends. You may have different boundaries with different people who are emotionally abusive. If so, you need to ask yourself why. I get it. Let's say you don't want to lose a job by setting boundaries with an emotionally abusive boss. But if you were in my office, I would try and help you retain your self-esteem regardless. I would try to help you speak up for your boundaries in a healthy way. And in the end, if your boundaries are still being abused, I would help you see if this is the right place for you to work. This is only multiplied by thousands if the person who is crossing those boundaries is your mate or your partner. Again, is this relationship the right one for you? Now let me be clear. You cannot look at any of this if you have yet to set those boundaries for yourself. You may have begun to realize the effects on your psyche of your own lack of boundaries, but you have not yet claimed your self-worth and set a very clear limitation on the behavior you accept in your life by those around you. If this is you, please, I don't want you to be angry with yourself. That won't help. But I offer you that if in any relationship you feel uncomfortable, threatened, or unsafe in any way, there may be a boundary you're ready to look at setting. Let me repeat what I said at the beginning of this podcast. Sometimes, in order to set boundaries, you have to be really self-aware of what you don't want in life or in a relationship. You need to be able to check in with your needs, emotions, hurts, and growth. All that stuff is wrapped up in self-awareness. You need to be able to see what is working in your life and what isn't. Look for the red flags. Take a moment to think of any place or anyone where you would feel happier and safer by setting a new boundary. And what is it? What is the boundary? Stop this podcast if you need to journal or reflect on this question. Now I'd like to talk about the boundaries we need to put on ourselves so that we treat ourselves respectfully. Again, it starts with self-awareness. Here's another personal example. I had to set a boundary for myself this last week around news. It's gotten so crazy and so random that I realized in a moment of self-awareness that I was truly getting angry all the time. I had anxiety and I was unhappy. Worse, I was doom scrolling. I love that word, doom scrolling. I was grabbing my phone and scrolling day and night for updates from every news source I could find. Twitter was my obsession. It was not good for me. So yesterday I did some yoga, I meditated, and I realized I had to set the boundary for myself that I could not read the news for at least 5 days. If there was anything important to hear, I was sure I would hear it anyway. Again, it was a limitation I was giving myself, a boundary for peace of mind and my sanity. This brings me to more physical boundaries. Do you have boundaries that you would like to set or that you have set around working on your off hours, accepting work-related calls or checking texts or emails after work? Do you have physical boundaries that you'd like to set with someone who invades your space, your home, your kitchen, your personal belongings? What kind of material boundaries do you have with partners around your phone, mail? Do you feel safe sharing your passwords with them? It's not unhealthy to keep these things private in a relationship, especially if you're not feeling safe with someone. And we are entitled in every relationship to have our own separate world that we choose when we share with someone else. But if you are keeping them private because you are engaging in something that would hurt them, that's a whole nother story. Purchases you don't want them to see, people you're in contact with that you don't want them to know about. If you have set this secretive boundary for those reasons, you may need to do some internal work to see why. So, material boundaries can include so many things. Do you have boundaries around lending people money or clothes or your books? Are you comfortable lending someone your car? Again, you are entitled to have boundaries around all of these things. Let's talk some more about social media boundaries. I have a client that set a boundary for her family that they can't put her kids' faces up in videos on social media. I so get it. She believes that as they grow up, they have a right to choose what's out in the world with their faces attached to it. So she set a boundary for all of her family, a line that they can't cross in order to respect her and her kids. In order to respect her, the family needs to adhere to this boundary. I offer you to look at your social media use and see if there are more boundaries that you would benefit from. Ones that would make you less anxious or more in control or less stalked. Social media has become one of the number one discussions in therapy. Take a look at your time on social media, your friends. Make sure they're respectful of you. Take a look at your reasons to be on social media. Take a look to see if there are any boundaries you need to put on yourself in order to be healthier on this giant platform of expression. Are you honoring yourself and allowing only those that honor you to be connected? So let me end this by helping you see why you need boundaries. Without them, you may feel exhausted or taken advantage of. You may feel put upon or emotionally abused. In all of your relationships, if you don't have healthy boundaries, this can lead to so many feelings of resentment or hurt. Anger can be laying under the surface or can rise to the present. But mostly, I worry that all of those things are what you will end up feeling about yourself. If you don't stand up for yourself, you will feel anger towards yourself. You will be the one that continues to make you feel weak by accepting any behavior that makes you feel unsafe. Here are a few quotes on boundaries. I love this one from Henry Cloud. You get what you tolerate. Here's another by that famous woman, Anonymous. The only people who get upset about you setting boundaries are the ones who are benefiting from you having none. And here's a quote from me from this podcast. If you are afraid to set boundaries with someone for fear of losing them, it is not them you will lose, it's you. Please be good to yourselves in the next week. Eat nourishing foods, drink lots of water, surround yourself with people who honor you and treat you with utmost respect. And please treat yourself the same way. Thank you for letting me into your life this week, and I look forward to popping back in again next week. Thank you for joining me today on the Journey to Awareness podcast. My hope is that you leave this podcast inspired, fired up, and ready to take that next step on the magical journey of self-awareness. And then you come back and join us again. Oh, and if you can do me a quick favor and please leave me a 5-star review over on iTunes, I gain so much from reading the reviews and getting feedback from my listeners. Thanks again for spending your time with me today. Be sure to visit me on my Facebook page, Working on Me, and on my website, workingonme.com, for past episodes and insight into the fabulous journey to you.